The last speeches that we saw from Ismail Haniyeh in Gaza and Khaled Mashal in Qatar, they clarified their position. They explained that they will fight Israel and their goal to wipe out the state of Israel. And I think that we must deliberate our position regarding Hamas from the beginning, from scratch. And I think that we have enough force to finish this story and to topple this terrorist organization. And I don't see any differences between Hamas and ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We saw their executions in Gaza Strip. It's exactly like Islamic States or Al-Qaeda.
There have been no rockets falling on the Gaza Strip or Israel now for some time, a necessary respite for a part of the world that seemingly cannot live even a sliver of time in peace. Now there may be a new threat that is on the verge of enveloping nations at every global corner. How long before ISIS takes its butchery to Israel, a land and people that are always fighting for their very existence? Welcome to Midpoint. Founder of the Values Network, noted author with almost 30 books translated into many languages, including the latest, Kosher Lust. He's often referred to as America's rabbi, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Rabbi Shmuley, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
We unfortunately have to face hard decisions in America here when it comes to ISIS, and also some very hard facts. It turns out that Steven Sotloff, the second American journalist who was beheaded by ISIS, holds dual American-Israeli citizenship. So it certainly has a connection to Israel now. But if you just take that, set that aside for a moment, Rabbi, I have to believe that in that nation itself, there has to be some sort of alarm at the moment, because if ISIS is moving at the rate that they are, you don't want to think about it, but there must be the realization that Israel will eventually be a target of this terrorist group, indeed?
Well, of course. Let's look at Hamas first, which is the other iteration of ISIS. Hamas is a gay-hating, women-suppressing, free speech-suppressing, bloodthirsty death cult. And that's what ISIS is. Now, Hamas's war against Israel is a war of values. They hate Israel for its values. They hate its openness. They hate its democratic values. They hate its freedom. All these radical Islamist organizations want to take control of people's lives, bring them back to the Stone Ages, and chop their heads off if they're not in step with their radical agenda. Now, Israel still has its hands full with Hamas. I mean, no one believes that Israel's not going to be back in the Gaza Strip within 18 months max, as Hamas rebuilds its rockets and begins to fire them to kill as many Jews in Israel as possible. ISIS, of course, hates the United States more right now because they're facing the wrath of the United States, a tiny little bit of it, nowhere near enough. But Israel is seen as the client state of the United States. Israel is that free democratic society that ISIS so hates. I mean, these are monsters. What don't we get about ISIS? These are monsters. They have no sliver of humanity. They have no iota of compassion. When President Obama says that my foreign policy is let's not do stupid stuff, let us not forget that one of the stupidest things we can do is inaction and inactivity. Neville Chamberlain today is remembered in infamy not because he did stupid stuff, but because he didn't do the right stuff when it was so necessary.
When you say what you have said, you are speaking for a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world who certainly feel the same way. But there are many people here, Rabbi, who say that the president, Barack Obama, has his hands tied. He can only go so far simply because America does not have the cooperation of much of the international community. Certainly, Britain is behind it. Israel would be there. But so many other people have no respect for America right now that America can't go it alone. What can America then learn from what Israel has gone through against Hamas? What do they need to learn when it comes to dealing with people whose only reason for living is to kill people as murderously as possible?
Well, let's look at President Obama's reaction to the beheading of James Foley when he went golfing afterward. You know, a lot of people said that was insensitive. That's not how I see it. Rather, President Obama's major leadership deficiency is in his values. He doesn't hate evil. He's kind of aloof and cerebral about evil. The reason he could go golfing right afterward is that he wasn't sickened to his stomach. He wasn't revolted to his core by an American having his blood spurt out of his neck as they chopped his head off. This stuff is grotesque, and it's supposed to make you want to vomit. You're supposed to be incapable of swinging that golf club simply because your body won't even respond because you're so sickened and disgusted. We need President Obama to start just speaking in emotional terms about how evil and wicked these people are, because that's what will motivate us to fight them. Let us remember that Abraham Lincoln spoke about hatred as something he hated. Winston Churchill said that Hitler was a man that he hated. And we need to see some hatred from the president towards these groups, not just about American interests, but civilization, how civilized people behave and how civilized people react when they see something that's truly barbaric and brutal. Now, Israel feels that way towards Hamas. I feel that way towards Hamas. I say unapologetically, I hate Hamas. I hate everything they stand for. I hate an organization that stones women to death. I hate an organization that throws husbands and wives in jail for holding hands on a beach and showing romantic love. I hate an organization that practices honor killings against Palestinian women for simply choosing the man they want to marry instead of being forced into it by their fathers. I'm not indifferent about an organization like that. And ISIS? Who could be emotionally indifferent about ISIS? How can we only speak about how ISIS may be a threat to American interests and then we should start taking action? What about just being revolted by what they represent, being unable to sleep at night? Any one of us who watches the news, any one of us who saw Steven Sotloff in the last moments of his life forced to speak that gobbledygook propaganda garbage, and anyone who saw that evil British terrorist, the coward with a hood on his head, Jihadi John, who can sleep at night and not thinking, who are these monsters and what are we going to do about them? I mean, that's the issue. President Obama, show us something. You know, just show some outrage at a press conference. Lose it a little bit. Because that's what would send a message to these terrorists that you're not going to get away with it. It would send a message to Hamas and to ISIS and all these radical Islamic organizations that are a direct threat to human civilization, not just the State of Israel and not just the United States of America.
Rabbi, as a man of God, there are some people who would say that it's not right to say kill people. And certainly we've heard this from a lot of folks as well. They say that your job as a man of God is to look for peace. But what we hear in your voice right now is absolute hatred for what Hamas has done. We understand it. There are so many people who follow you and who would absolutely agree with you. Is then the only answer just to kill as many people as you can on the Hamas side of, I mean, certainly when you see 61% of Palestinians would vote for the militant leader over Mahmoud Abbas right now, you would then seem to think that many of the Palestinian people also share the same values, that they want to kill Israelis. Is a simple answer then just kill as many people as you can before they kill you?
Let me first be clear. I speak to my Christian brothers and sisters right now. When Jesus says in the New Testament, love your enemies, notice he doesn't say love God's enemies. He says love your enemies. Your enemy is the guy that takes your parking spot. Your enemy is the guy that got the promotion at work that you were supposed to get. It's personal, and Jesus is saying rightly, you have to overcome that kind of animus. It's baseless and it's petty. But God's enemies are this Jihadi John who chopped off one of God's children's heads in front of a camera. He's an animal, he's a monster. The idea that he should live is an affront and an abomination to all civilized rules of living. It's an abomination and an affront to God. The only thing he deserves is a drone strike quickly that erases every last vestige of his existence here on earth. I'm sorry, when you are a monster of that caliber, you have erased the countenance of God from your image. There is no longer a human likeness. And for us to equivocate about that is to have no values, is to have contempt for human life. The Ten Commandments is clear. Thou shalt not murder, in Hebrew, lo tirtzach. It does not say thou shalt not kill. Kill is self-defense. If someone comes to harm your family, to harm your children, and you do nothing about it, you are a terrible, wicked parent. Your job is to protect them. And that's why the great men of history, look at the United States, were those who fought tyranny. George Washington didn't make peace with the British. He fought them, and that was after they taxed our tea, let alone if they were ISIS. Abraham Lincoln didn't make peace with slavery. He fought it, and 700,000 Americans died. That's quite a price to pay. And Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt fought Nazi Germany. They didn't want to kill people. They wanted to stop the spread of evil. So if it takes killing people to stop the spread of evil, that's a terrible price we have to pay, but it must be paid. There are three categories in life. There is the good,
I have 20
the
seconds
bad,
left,
and the necessary.
Rabbi. 20 seconds.
Okay, well, good. It's never good to kill people. It's usually bad, but it's sometimes very necessary. and destroying ISIS and Hamas, not the Palestinians, but the people who join these groups and who are self-declared humanity haters, they must be stopped.
So America must learn to resolve to kill the enemy.
We must stop the enemy if it involves killing them before they kill us, absolutely.
All right, Rabbi, we have so much more that we wanted to talk to you about today, so many other things as well with regard to Israel. Please come back again soon, and let's make sure we continue this discussion. But we thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, later this hour, the miracle drug for battling heart disease. So much more right here on Midpoint, where we question everything.